We're live. Go back. Great Friday evening, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Hearts of Men podcast, hosted by the Empowering Perspective community. We are your hosts for this evening's discussion, and we lost somebody, and there he is. All right, so we are your hosts for this evening's discussion. I am Dwayne Dwyer, also known as the Mindset Coach. Accompanying me on this evening is Mr. Tawami Gaddy, who is also known as the Available Man. The Available Man himself. Also, I'm sorry, Roland. I almost messed it up. Also, with me, to my right is Mr. Mr. Christopher McClellan across the table, or as I affectionately say, on the other side of the table with Chris, right? But he is the angry guy still trying to learn. And also with us, we have Mr. Roland Walker, also known as the poor man's Dr. Phil, which is also the man of many hats. And also with us tonight, Mr. Garfield Martin, the Unk with the Funk, host of the Uncle Junior Network. Gentlemen, how are you on this evening?
Doing well, doing very well.
I am well.
I'm chilling.
Man, how I come in with all that energy, man? Right. I'm doing well.
The brothers, they gotta bring that voice.
Come on, man.
Turn my sexy voice on in case my wife watches.
Like we about to sing, we gotta say the voice.
You know what I mean? She may be watching tonight. She out of town right now, so I'm at home by myself. So just in case she watching, I had to throw my sexy voice for her real quick.
Did your voice crack when you said it?
Yeah, a little bit. I ain't used to talking like that.
He's breaking out in the sweating highs right now. Listen, shout out to Miss Uncle Junior. Shout out to Miss Uncle Junior. We appreciate it. In fact, shout out to all the wives, man. Shout out to Miss Poor Man's Dr. Phil as well. I want to make sure I recognize her. And last but not least, shout out to Miss Son of Timothy, the Available Woman. Doggone it. I'm just gonna put it out there. Listen, I also want to recognize our amazing members, man. You guys are awesome. So I just want to make sure I recognize you guys in the chat. So welcome to today's show. Cassandra McKenzie, Michelle Ray. Let me see who else. Miss Lisa Keys, Miss Charlotte Jordan. Always good to see you. Bernadette Simmons, good to see you. Crystal Everett. Always good to see you. And last but not least, Queen V, Miss Verlene McCoy. Hey, welcome to you guys. And for everybody who is with us this evening who are not in the chat as of yet, I want to recognize you as well. So by all means, jump in the chat, say hello so that we can celebrate you, because that's one of the things that we do in this community. Speaking of that, another thing that we do in this community, we support one another. So I want to make sure that I send a super shout out to all of our super supporters. And I also want to kind of touch base with everybody when it comes down to the Empowering Perspective membership program. Listen, the Empowering Perspective membership program is your gateway to sustained progression and self-improvement. Through personalized resources, supportive community, and thought-provoking content, we empower you to transform your perspective, unleash your potential, and embark on a journey of continuous growth through this e-learning platform. This is not just a membership, it's a commitment to evolving your worldview, enhancing your skills, and enriching your life. Discover the power within. Join the Empowering Perspective program membership program today. Listen, this is going to be an amazing conversation. I want to make sure I start off by saying that. because that being said, we are going to dive into this conversation, which is all about fear. So we're going to talk about how to overcome fear and take action. I think that's important. So when we talk about this, I want everybody to kind of think with me, because trust me when I tell you, I think everybody can relate to this who is ready to get into this. I appreciate that. I think when we think about this, everybody can relate to fear. I don't care who you are, you've been there. And so, with that being said, here is the problem. The problem is fear is the thing that is preventing each and every person that you know. I don't care who you are, you're not exempt. Fear is preventing you from achieving the best version of yourself. I really and truly do believe that from my heart of hearts. So what does that look like? So we all get to the point of what I tend to call comfortability, and we get nestled into our own little comfort zones, right? And so then when we get this idea of this thing that we want to do, then we say, okay, I want to do that. And then I start moving in that direction. I start to feel uneasy. I start to feel a sense of anxiety and so forth and so on. And then in my mind, I get this thought. So, you know what? It wasn't that bad back where I came from. It wasn't that bad in my comfort zone. In fact, I didn't feel any anxiety. And then as the point of we starting to do it, we say, you know what? I'm going back to which I came from, because that's comfortable for me. We call that the terror zone, right? So the issue is that fear will prevent you from breaking through that terror zone and creating a new comfort zone on the other side of that. So that being said, I kind of want to get into what we tend to call conceptual awareness. Now, what is conceptual awareness? I just want you guys to imagine with me. I can't really use the word because somebody actually used it, but it's called it's imagine. Just combine the word imagine and engineer, right? So I want you to imagine with me as we're having this discussion, what would actually happen in your life if you had the ability, which I know each and every person under the sound of my voice do, you had the ability to forego fear and then just step out and do the thing that you really want to do, regardless of how you feel at that particular moment. So, first question, gentlemen, I want to throw at you on this fine Friday evening is, what is fear and how would you describe its effect on everyday life?
I would say fear is imagining the worst. Like imagining all of the bad things that can happen. It's a paralyzing feeling that will stop you dead in your tracks when you want to do something that either you have never done before or people have put in your head that you cannot do. Its effect is just that it stops you from doing what you want to do or what you feel you have the ability to do, because in your mind, you think it's going to go bad. Instead of focusing on actually accomplishing what you want to do or just doing it, you just stop. It's a paralyzing feeling. That is about the best way that I could describe it.
I think there are various kinds of fear, but the fear I'm going to talk about is the fear that you don't have control over the outcome. So whether good or bad, the not knowing what will happen will, as Chris said, will paralyze you and keep you from moving forward in whatever you're trying to do, or whatever you want to do, because you don't simply know the outcome. You don't know whether you're going to pass, whether you're going to fail, whether it's going to blow up in your face. So instead of doing something, you choose to do nothing out of fear.
I would say that fear is sometimes, I'm gonna say sometimes, the evidence of unpreparedness, lack of knowledge, and prior life experiences. And I say that because it kind of encompasses everything my brothers just said. Uh, when you think of the worst, you know, the worst thing that can happen if I go after this, if I say this, if I spin this, if I do this, sometimes the problem of the fear is not that you think the worst, is that you feel underprepared to handle the worst. And so it causes you to have this jerk reaction when it's time to make that move. And you tend to hold back because prior experiences tells you that the worst can happen, and the lack of knowledge or information in that area tells you you don't really know what to expect even if you move forward. And, or thirdly, I'm not prepared to handle the worst that can happen if it comes to me. That's my take.
All right. What is fear? I wrote down a couple of things. First of all want to say that fear is a feeling in most cases, which implies that it's temporary. So it's not something that you have to stay in 100% of the time. There may be some people have fear of dogs, but they're not constantly in fear of dogs 24 hours a day. Maybe when they go to a park or they're out walking and they see a dog or they hear dog bark, it may trigger that fear. So I first wanted to start off by saying that I think that fear is a feeling and that in most cases, it's a temporary thing. And also, fear can be unexplored territory, whether that's in your mind, whether that's in somewhere you haven't been in your life, whether it's a goal or something that you want to achieve. Like you haven't explored it. I mean, it's like it's unexplored territory. You've never been there yet. You've never gotten to that goal yet. So you don't know what it's like on the other side of maybe your hard work, or if someone wants to lose weight, you don't know what it's like on the other side of that. And then I also kind of sort of what Son Timothy was talking about, negative past experiences can cause fear as well. So I think, it's a combination of those. Fear is very complex, you know what I mean? Because it's so different and people experience it in so many different types of ways, in so many different forms of their life, that it's hard to really trying to put it into one sentence. You know what I mean? However, at the same time, I think that, you know, when it comes to describing its effect on everyday life, I think some people choose to give into that fear. And I think some people choose to use that as a motivator. I think some people can look back at their experiences and be like, you know what? I didn't think I could lose those 3 pounds, and I did. You know what? So now I feel better. The fear of losing 3 more is not there anymore because they went through the week of, fasting or doing whatever they needed to do in order to get where they needed to be. So I think that, just how it described in everyday life, I think some people use it as a motivator, and I think some people can use it and have effect on your life in a negative type of way when they constantly dwell on a particular situation or a particular fear.
So I'm loving everything I'm hearing here. But I kind of want to like go back and kind of analyze each one of these perspectives because I think collectively every one of you are spot on. However, I want to make sure that it's making sense across the spectrum. Chris, you started off and you said it's more kind of like a imagined outcome, an unknown imagined outcome that a person creates in their mind. And I don't want to just throw this at you. I want to kind of throw this at the entire panel. Why would me as a person, why would I create the worst case scenario outcome of the potential of a thing when I have never even came to the realization of what it could possibly be?
It could be, as Tuame said earlier, that you don't feel as though you are prepared for said outcome. And it could be a little bit of what Roland said too. You do not have control over it. I always say this, control is an illusion. It is an illusion. And I think if we're speaking as the feeling, I think that fear is a defense mechanism that the mind creates because your mind is looking out specifically for you. And if you are doing something that you have never done before, or if you are embarking on something that quote unquote terrifies you, that's your brain saying, this is going to be scary. So I'm going to put that in you. That would be my take on it. And that's me as a man who has experienced that side of it.
I think some of it is people. Oh, how can I say it? Come back to me. Come back to me. Make sure I put it out right.
I would say for myself, my bad. Did I cut somebody off? Okay, my bad. For me, I have to look at it from a personal perspective, right? I come from a life or a background to where in my life, all I have experienced growing up, it felt like, let me say that, felt like all I have experienced was disappointment, letdown, failure, and trauma. And not just in me, but in the people around me as well, collectively. And so that has become my normal outlook on life. And so sometimes it's hard to view an outcome or something that you're trying to achieve or go after as as if it can work, because why would it work for me? I come from the slums. I'm a nobody. I hear people who always time saying, yeah, I started from the bottom, now I'm here, but I don't know. I've always, as far as I've seen you, you was at the top. You know what I'm saying? And not too many of us know people that climbed the ladder from the bottom where we were. So when we start to look at situations and look at opportunities and look at things in our lives, sometimes we are held short because we have been voided of the the vision of success or of happiness or of joy. Some of us are afraid of joy. We're afraid to be happy. And so we self-sabotage relationships, jobs, because we don't know what it looks like for it to go right. And so what do? We pull back, or we shut down, or we just reject going after it to avoid that pain.
I think part of the problem, I think part of it is the journey itself. You know, when someone has fear of something, like if they have a fear of heights, or if they have a fear of, going to get that degree or whatever it may be, I think sometimes they look at the journey and they be like, I don't know if I can do that. So I think for sometimes what causes people to think the negative way over the positive way is, because they think about how hard the journey is, and they think about that part and they focus on that, and they have such fear because, I mean, think about, how hard it is for someone to lose 30 pounds who has never worked out before in their life. Like, it has to be terrifying when you talk to that trainer and that trainer tells you that you need to do this, and you need to do this, and you need to do this, and you've never done that before in your life. Like, that's hard for some people, so there's a lot of fear with just the journey. There's the fear of the failure. There's the fear of you can't do it. Um, so I think why people go and do that a lot of times is because they look at their past, or they look at other people's experiences, or they do comparison. They say, well, you know what? All of these people, none of these people lost weight. You know what I mean? How am I going to be able to do it? So I think the reason why is because they may, a lot of times people tend to gravitate towards the negativity anyway. You know what I'm saying? So that's why you look at social media and the negative stuff really pops more than the positive stuff. It's just how it is right now. So I think when it comes to fear, a lot of people do the same thing. They gravitate towards that fear, that negative energy that other people put out, and then they compare it to themselves, and which creates more fear, and it creates the fear of the journey. And I think that may be one of the reasons why people automatically go negative instead of the positive thoughts.
I think we automatically gravitate towards the negative because we always seem to look for the worst case scenarios. We look for the worst case scenarios within our upbringing, within people we know. Oh, this happened to my boy Tim, his uncle, he died from this. He was in a plane crash. And so we limit ourselves by what we think we know about other people, as well as what we've experienced in our own lives. And we use that as a tool to supposedly keep us from harm.
Hey, can I add this, Coach? Alibi. I also think that it is a good thing to look at the negative, not dwell on it. But I think when you're trying to create, when you're trying to when you're trying to accomplish a mission or something like that, you have to look at that. You know what I mean? I know that's not necessarily this portion of it, but you have to, because if you look at the worst possible outcome, you be like, okay, well, boom. If I don't wear my seatbelt and I drink when I drive, this is what could happen. So maybe I should do this and not that. You know, so I think sometimes it's okay to look at it, but not necessarily dwell on it.
Well, and give me 1 second, Gary. So I'm glad you said that, and no, I don't think that is getting ahead. But I honestly think what you just described is more so of just being reality focused, right? Like you have to be able to look at the cause and effects of a thing. The cause and effects should not create fear; it should make you make right decisions. So I think you're right in that aspect, but I think that would be more so of a cause and effects analysis that we implement throughout the course of decision making. Go ahead, brother Gad. I'm sorry.
No. You fine. I was thinking while he was talking. Sometimes we get caught up in the label of things, right? So people are quick to say you're a pessimist if you say, well, this can go wrong if this happens. But you can't get caught up in that mindset, because sometimes, like he was just pointing out, that's how we do proper planning. If I'm not planning for what can go wrong, then when it goes wrong and I'm out there stranded and I don't know what to do, well, if I get a plan, and I think we try to live, so this concept of live free and living your best life means that we no longer make proper decisions that are well thought out. That's just, to me, that's foolishness. And so, yeah, sometimes you have to add your little pessimist side of yourself so that you can better prepare for what can happen. Because when it do happen, you'll be set up, or you already have things in place, so that's the reason why you get insurance. You don't get insurance because you're a pessimist. You get insurance because your car can break down. And when it do, you don't want to be out there looking crazy trying to find someone on the side of the road to help you fix your car. You can call roadside assistance. It's already set up for you. So that's just to that point that Uncle Junior just made.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and absolutely. And let's be honest, you get insurance because it's the law. You got to get insurance. You don't have a way around it. But yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to take a different approach. It's different to dwell on the fear and not do anything, and to understand what could happen and have a contingency plan. You know what I'm saying? That's the difference. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people just dive into things without understanding the natural law of cause and effect. Yes, you need insurance because it is the law, but you also need insurance, just like Gaddy said, just in case you get into an accident and you do not have the funds to cover whatever repair it is. Your insurance kicks in and you pay a small amount, which is a contingency plan. Keep that small amount available, pay that, and your insurance company handles the rest. That's different than just willy-nilly just driving without insurance and getting hit and then hoping for the best. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And again, I agree 100%. No pushback with the insurance thing. But again, that's part of the concept of doing the right thing. But to your point, you still do the thing that is needed. It doesn't render you to paralysis, like Roland said previously. Before I give my response on this, I want to make sure that I say this, because as I'm doing this, I decided to start do something different. I'm taking notes, but I'm keeping score, right? And shout out to Chris, man. Chris, you've been racking them up just now, bro. So you get the star right now. So I'm just saying. I'm trying to figure out how I can put it on the screen just so you guys can know. But I'm listen. I
What we
like
getting
this.
graded on?
Responses, man. You've been
I'd
watching.
say this is new to me too.
Yeah.
Listen,
I want to go star.
A1. You know, exactly.
I want to go star.
Hey, it's not like it's not like anybody gave bad responses. Chris was just on it just now. But
just
listen,
play your part. Just play your role.
Oh, I'm pull out my.
Hey, Uncle Junior say, "Shut up and get in line."
There you go.
Hey, that's
Hey,
how.
but here's the deal. Hey, just create better content in your responses.
All right, here we go. We ain't gonna go off in a tangent on the stars now.
I'm gonna start using words from another language now.
And you don't get no stars till you cut that beeping out.
Okay, so here we go. But listen,
Come on, man.
going back to the topic, I think you guys are spot on with this idea of fear. Chris, I gave you the star because I loved your perspective of the unimagined outcome. There's this thing, and I'm gonna put it in the chat so everybody can read it. Is a thing that's called the negativity bias. And what we have to realize is, for a group of people who have seen a lot of negative in their surroundings, whether it's in their neighborhood, whether it's in the school system, whether it's in their own household, they are wired for negativity. So it does not matter what good shows up, there's going to be a negative aspect that actually comes out of their thought process behind it. So when you say that, hey, you can be anything in the world that you want to be, that person will hear what you say and be like, I can be anything in the world I want to be except this, or except that, or I can't do that, or we can't do that, or whatever that looks like. So negativity bias is a thing, and that thing actually puts you in a perspective to where you are paralyzed. Going back to Roland point, because I'm agreeing 100%, you're paralyzed to where you can't move forward despite of how you feel. Now, fear invokes a chemical reaction within you. I want to make sure I drive that point home. It's larger than just the feeling. The feeling is the result of the thoughts that you actually have behind the thing. So when you're imagining the worst possible outcome for doing something that you've never done before, then that chemical reaction kicks in, and that invokes the feeling behind it. So the feeling is only a result of the thought. So I love where you guys are going with this, and thank you so much for your candid and open responses. Want to make sure I grab some of the points from the chat, because I am seeing some good information. Can we start with Lisa Keys? I think it was self-sabotage. Yes. Self-sabotage comes from a fear of failure that causes doubt and can cause you to forget the truth. And I like the fact that she injected the phrase, the truth in there, because the truth and facts are two totally different things. I want to make sure I'm saying that. The truth is 100% without a doubt the truth. Case in point, the law of gravity, whatever your understanding of the law of gravity is, what goes up must come down. That is the truth. The concept behind that is that it has to be heavier than air. If it's heavier than air, then it will come down. If it's lighter than air, then it won't come down. So that's the truth behind the law of gravity. However, we also have facts to go along with that concept of the truth. And in most cases, the facts and the truth don't align. So I like the fact that she brought that to the table. Next comment is Cassandra said, the thought of change, moving from their comfort zone, evokes fear. Then, like Roland said, we use other experiences and what others have said to validate our fear. So I like that as well, because what you will find is that people will surround themselves with people who have the same thought processes. So I don't have the people around me that will motivate me to move outside of my comfort zone or challenge that fear. I have the people who feel the same way when it comes down to fear. And only thing we do is validate the fear that exists within each other. So great point. I think there was one more with Lisa Keys about internal. There it is. Internal fear can influence the external vision available to everyone and cause some to remain stagnant, therefore hinder growth. I like the idea of internal fear and versus external vision, because what we have to realize is that sometimes it takes a person outside of you to give you a thought that you've never had before. And unfortunately, because of that negativity bias that I just talked about, I will shoot that vision down simply because I don't believe that that's available for me. So great points. And I thank you for sharing that with us. Um, and shout out to Miss Uncle Junior. Welcome to the show. Good to see you. Um, and so moving on to our next question. Our next question is, what do you think is the source of that fear?
One of them, like someone said, is past experiences. You know, when you may have been in a bad relationship with an ex, and there have been things that went on, you may tend to not trust going into the next relationship. So, just to keep it short and sweet, and I'll circle back around later on, is that past experiences is one of the things that create a source of fear.
I would say just not knowing and not having control. I think that could be one of the biggest fears because, to be honest, I don't think, I do not think you control anything as far as what can happen. You can only control how you react to what happens. So that could be it, just not knowing. And as I stated earlier, your mind looks out for you. And when your mind says, hey, you are doing something different and I do not understand it. So I'm going to put this in you so that way you can stop and get back to being comfortable and get back to what I'm used to. Sometimes that helps. Sometimes that can be a source too. And you obviously have the external people around you that are telling you that you cannot do what you put your mind to because they cannot see themselves doing it.
I want to circle back around with we talk about it sometimes when it comes to like our environment or social media, right? So I think social media adjusts, what we decide to intake on a daily basis creates a source of fear. We see a lot of people on social media that can't do this or can't do that. So a lot of times people take that and then they apply that to their own life. They start looking at data and they look at the numbers and say, based off the numbers, I'm probably not going to be successful at opening up my own business because so many businesses fail within the first couple of years. Yes, that's true. That's the data. That's what the data says. However, there are so many different businesses that have opened up, and there are so many businesses that still have thrived, even though. So I think when you're looking out there, you're looking at social media, and I think that when you start comparing those different things, all of those things that we see on a daily basis can create a source of fear in our lives.
I think we also look at other people's lives. Like if you had a relative who opened up a business and it failed, you saw that. So, and internally you thought, man, if I open up said business, it's going to fail. And you may not have known, but now you have certain triggers and traumas that will lead you to say, well, if I do this or that, like growing up, I knew I wouldn't be a smoker because I seen levels. That's how it was to me. I seen levels to it, and they ended a certain way because I grew up in the crack epidemic. So I knew I wasn't gonna do it because there was a fear if I started with just cigarettes, then I could end up a crackhead. Wouldn't happen like that 9 times out of 10. But in my head, it was one of those things where I said, "No, I can't do it because it might happen."
Whew, for me, I would make it uh it's simple in my head, right? Because I'm thinking back on our previous discussions when you talk about identity and self-esteem. If I don't see myself as a decision maker or as a leader, sometimes the fear is me putting myself in a position to where I have to be something I don't believe I am. And so if I decide to make this investment, I'm the boss of my own money, or whatever the case. A lot of us have the fear of making decisions. And so we always try to find people to pan off our decisions to. So when we fail, we can blame them because we don't, you know, some of us just really don't see ourselves as capable or as in position, and instead of seeing that we have to put ourselves in position, you don't just show up in position. So sometimes that identity factor plays a part in what we do and how we react.
I'm
You
glad
think
you
that
brought up
comes from like
identity. I am glad you brought up identity, because another source of fear could be the imposter syndrome. Your mind is going to constantly remind you of who you were, but you are transforming into something completely different. So you are going to constantly be reminded of who you were instead of constantly thinking about who you are and what you are becoming. The imposter syndrome is a real thing.
especially when people remind you of it, but that's another story for another day.
Absolutely.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily call that imposter syndrome. I just call that bad company. Uncle Junior, you was about to say something, sir. What were you about to say?
It was something to Son of Timmy. I think I wanted him to explain something, but I forgot now.
Well, okay, we'll come back to it. But I do like, so Chris, I thank you for bringing up the imposter syndrome. But I want to go back to what Gaddy and Roland both said, because I'm sorry, Gaddy brought up the concept of identity, and Roland brought up the concept of what you observed in your environment going forward, growing up, whatever that looks like. And I like the fact that he shared that he knew he wasn't going to be a smoker based upon his observations. Um, so when I combine the two and I look at the partial concept of my identity and then look at what my environment taught me, is it possible that the combination of the two can create some type of debilitating fear within me?
It definitely can, especially when you grow up in certain environments where you have people that are destructive in nature, but it's normalized. It's normal for that environment. So when you get out of, say, an environment like we all, majority of us were in the military, and when I came in the military, a lot of things that were normal from where I was from, like I had to realize, dude, that's definitely not that's not the norm. That's not how everyday people live. And because some people are trained, hey, we gotta live check to check. We
Right.
gotta fake it till we make it. We gotta do, instead of living in what you have, living in the excess and actually saving and building. We aren't taught that, a lot of us. And then when you get to a point to where you are, it's like it's hard to release that, because it's like, hold up, if I release it, this could happen. Well, this that can happen. So you always looking for the negative because your mind is conditioned that way.
Man, you hit something there, because what happens with the habits that we learned from growing up in poverty, some of us don't leave those habits when we start making money and still feel like we're living in poverty, because we tend to waste away money doing the dumb stuff we did, or we saw our parents do, or our aunties do. And we have to learn. And that's why I think it's so important. And this is just me. I think character has to come before the money. We so quick, even in the military, we so quick to promote people because we like them, but the character has to come before the promotion, or else you're gonna be that same dumb specialist that's out here chucking and jiving when he get the stripes just because Sarge like him, or he does good work, or whatever the case may be. But that 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 mindset of leadership, or that mindset of wealthiness, does not leave him first. He's going to keep making those same mistakes and making those same decisions, he or she making those same decisions, and it will ruin you at that next level. And you'll wonder, how do I make all this money and it's gone? Because you're making the same poor mistakes you made when you were living in poverty.
I love it. I love it. I like that because I will, and I really like the fact you brought money to the conversation, right? Because I don't know how you guys were. I didn't see investments coming out of my house growing up. Um, I didn't see that. So everything I learned about investments was self-taught. Not only was it self-taught, I had to go talk to somebody and ask questions and then ask more questions and get investments for dummies and things of that nature. Um, but you have to also understand that there was a degree of fear there as well, because I am relinquishing my hard-earned cash and I don't necessarily know what to expect. Going back to Chris' point, that is a version of control. I have zero control on what the stock market is doing and things of that nature. So I had to learn to relinquish that fear for the sake of that. Some of us have not matured to that just yet. Some of us, and I will also add to it the reason why some of us haven't matured, and I don't want to make excuses, but we just haven't been around the right people to have the right conversations, right? Because in being in the right location, having the right conversation, somebody can inject a thought and be like, I like that. Let me see what this looks like for me. And so that's one of the reasons why I liked what you guys said. But the combination of what you said, I really like, because when you grow up in a situation, and I think, Gaddy, you made mention of check to check, when you grow up in a situation that sees survival as the norm, then you become an adult who, oh, Roland said that. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to steal your thunder, sir. In fact, go start you. Um, so so when you grow up in a situation where survival is the norm, then you have a survival complex, which means that even when you get to the point of making more money, you still behave as though you're still in survival mode. And so to your point, you're going out there and buy the $200-300 sneakers. You're going out there and spending all this unnecessary amount of money on stuff because you think stuff will actually help people to view you in a different light, and not necessarily realizing that your character is the thing that should go before you, like was previously mentioned. So, man, I love you got your points here. And I think there was a question that I actually seen in the chat. Oh, go start for honesty. Stop it. Uh, could it possibly? Could it be possible that who you currently are is who you always were, and the lower awareness is who the enemy tells you that is not who you are?
That's deep, but I think that you have to grow into the person that you are. And fear is not loosely, but directly connected to trust, because I don't trust somebody with something, or I don't trust a situation. Like we'll call it situational awareness, or whatever it is, or common sense, or we say people from the hood, we think different, because when something happened, we already know. We looking at the situation, we like, okay, I'm about to get up out of here, because I know if I stick around, like when I go home, when I'm in Detroit, when the street lights start buzzing, I know it's time to go, because I know the norm here. So my environment has told me from my upbringing, get up out of here, because something dumb about to happen. They've been drinking, yada yada yada. So remove yourself. Now that's a fear for survival. So fear is not always bad. Fear can be a good thing also, because it allows you to look at the situation in its totality and say, hey, I don't need to be here.
So I'm agreeing with you, but I kind of want to go back to her point, because even though I love your response, I think her point is more so surrounded around the idea of not necessarily growing, right? So could it be possible that who you currently are is who you always were? So I can give the illusion of growth within myself, but I am still underneath. I'm still the exact same person, because it could be some sort of fear that I have of releasing who I am in order to grab hold of the potential of who I could be. I still think that, and I could be wrong, at least if I'm wrong, by all means, put it back in the chat. But I still think her question is centered around fear, but I think it's more so of relinquishing who you are for the sake of who you can be.
That is the imposter syndrome. She just described it. Who you are right now and who you are going to be is who you were meant to be. But a small part of you is constantly reminding you of who you were. and constantly reminding you of your comfort zone and how safe it is. That is the imposter syndrome. That is what a lot of us who are growing into who we are fight with. We are it is a civil war between who we were and who we are meant to be. But it's an internal thing.
Since I can see where she took it. I'm gonna jump there a little bit because two scriptures jump in my head. Jeremiah says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." Right. So that comes to the idea that there's already a presupposed idea of who you are before you were born, before you were formed. He knew what he purposed you to be. So that is a validation that at your point of growth, I would even argue that you're still on your way to where you're supposed to be. That we never truly stop growing, right? That's why the process of growth has to be, once you have gone through the process, you have to continue, you have to repeat, rinse and repeat, because we have to continue to grow. And then Timothy, Paul tells Timothy in 2 Timothy that for Elohim has not given it, for God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. So when you take those two ideas together, you do have to believe that when fear creeps in and stops you from growth or progression, and it's just me, I believe that some things are of the Most High and some things are of the enemy. But here's the thing: some things the enemy has done well enough that he don't have to do, and that was just the fear in you that you have not allowed to be removed out of you. So the enemy might have crept in years ago, but the problem sometimes is you now. Even though you have seen yourself in the process of growth, you haven't allowed yourself to start seeing yourself how the Father sees you. And I think that's where you're getting to. So I do want to say I do agree when you put in the aspect that there has been some growth, that who you are now is who you were supposed to be. But I would say that you are closer to who you're supposed to be. Don't stop growing, because who you are now is just a part of the path. It's a part of the journey.
I like it. I love it. And thank you for going. And I was actually going to go back and grab her statement. So thank you for bringing that to the table, because I think that's correct. And I like what she said at the end, where she says, I'm up for the challenge. That's part of that overcoming fear. Like, we have to be consistently working in the direction of progressive awareness, becoming more aware of who we are identity wise based upon who he said I was, not based upon what my neighborhood told me, not based upon what my upbringing told me, the bad situations, the failed relationship. All of that stuff is just a mirage, because in essence, they only presented themselves so that you can grow. And if we look at it from that perspective, that changes everything. So thank you for your responses. I love it. I think Miss Verlene McCoy had a great statement as well. She said there is a breaking point to every fear. The person has to want not to fear. And I think that's true. I think at some point your determination has to overshadow the feeling that you get behind the fear that is present before you. And so that determination overcomes that feeling, and then you move in spite of how you feel. And I think that's where we have to be collectively. So thank you guys for all of your amazing comments, and thank you guys on the panel, man. You guys are awesome. And Roland is funny. You guys are awesome. So as we continue to move forward, what I do want to do at this particular point in time is to present some new information to everybody. Now, this information is patented by Dr. Carl Albrecht, and he kind of wrote a statement. He wrote a thing back in the days, back in 2012. And the thing states that every fear that we collectively go through falls in 5 categories, and we all share in these categories of fear. So when you start looking at these fears, what you'll see is that these fears include extinction, mutilation, loss of autonomy, separation, and what we call ego death. And it's put in a hierarchy simply because this is the way that we view it from most serious to least. And so, starting at the bottom, extinction is the fear of annihilation or ceasing to exist. This is a more fundamental way to express it than just fear of death. The idea of no longer being arouses a primary existential anxiety in all human beings. Consider that panicky feeling when you get to like looking over the edge of a tall building or something of that nature. The next one would be mutilation. So, mutilation is the fear of losing any part of our precious bodily structure. The thought of having our body's boundaries invaded, or of losing the integrity of any organ, body part, or natural function. Anxiety about animals such as bugs, spiders, snakes, and other creepy things arises from the fear of mutilation. Next is loss of autonomy. The fear of being immobilized, paralyzed, restricted, enveloped, overwhelmed, entrapped, imprisoned, smothered, or otherwise controlled by circumstances beyond our control. In physical form, it's commonly known as claustrophobia, but it also extends to our social interactions and relationships. Next would be separation, the fear of abandonment, rejection, or loss of connectedness, of becoming a non person, not wanted, respected, or valued by anyone else. The silent treatment, when imposed by a group, can have a devastating effect on its target. And last but not least is ego death, the fear of humiliation, shame, or any other mechanism of profound self disapproval that threatens the loss of integrity of the self, the fear of the shattering or disintegration of one's constructed sense of lovability, capability, and worthiness. So I just kind of wanted to put this out here because I think when we look at this, I think every fear that you've ever been through, every fear known to man will fall under this. So I do not have anything. I did not create this. Again, this was created by Dr. Carl Albrecht. He has it patented, and so all credit goes to him. But I think it's a wonderful thing to consider because when you stop and look at the things that prevent you from doing the things that you want to do, or some of those anxious feelings that you feel, you can see how they all fall in there. And I know I said they go from worse to more severe. They go from bad to more severe, but it goes from bad to more severe, going all the way up to death. So that being said, I would just kind of want to put that out there when it comes down to fear. And next, that transitions us into understanding its effects. So the effect of fear on your life. Now, we started talking about some of these already, but I kind of want to get into kind of like more specific concepts. So the next question I have is, how does fear impact the decision-making process?
It can, for a lot of people, it can be very devastating. And I think it flows on different levels. And what I mean by, if you're constantly making decisions based off of fear, then it's going to be hard for you to succeed in anything in life. Like, to get specific, like I said, like if you are trying to lose weight, but you're so scared to do it, so you're not making right decisions on the daily basis when it comes to working out and eating healthy and stuff like this, like it's just not going to be good. So like on the day-to-day basis, like if you are constantly living in fear of something, it's a lot of imbalance that's going on in your life. And just things just won't work out, man. It's like I don't see how anybody who lived their life in constant fear really have any type of success.
How does fear impact the decision-making process? As I stated earlier, it paralyzes you. It stops you from doing the thing that you know you can do, or experimenting in the thing that you want to do and that you have all of the tools to do. It completely stops you. And it can lead to a lot of regret. Dang, I wish I would have done this. If I would have done this, I would be here. But instead, I let that little voice in the back of my head telling me that something bad was going to happen stop me from doing it. And here I am. It is paralyzing.
Can I tell a small story? It's about some past life. Fear can impact your decision to whether or not you want to. I think there are many people who have stayed in relationships out of fear. And I'm one of those people. What I mean by that is, then I think sometimes when you're scared, or you may have a certain image or self-esteem or certain image about yourself, right? So there's a lot of fear that comes into men's image, or why they may have low self-esteem. So with that fear, or the fear of losing, or the fear to thinking that, hey, I can't find anybody better than this person, right? And now you staying with the woman for way longer, or staying with the man for way longer than what you should have, because of fear of what may happen if we break up, if we divorce, if we're not going to be together anymore. What's going to happen to the kids? How much of my life and how much of my time am I going to be able to spend with my child now? How much money am I going to have to allocate for child support, or how much money am I going to have to allocate to fly back and forth across the country to do visitations? So fear will sometimes, what does my money look like? I don't have that much money, so fear can impact one decision, and that decision may be to stay with somebody who you maybe shouldn't be with because of what could possibly happen on the other side. So that's my extra 2 cents on that.
Okay.
So
Go ahead.
No, I was just about to ask a question. So what you're saying is based upon fear, and I don't want to talk specifically about you, but based upon fear, that will make a person not make the decision that they know that they need to make for themselves.
Absolutely, 100%.
Gotcha.
I think when it comes to like in that situation, we allow ourselves to listen to those voices. Like growing up, your parents told you, don't run in the house with a pen. You might put your eye out. From whatever it is, they instill these things in you to scare you into not doing certain things that they didn't want you to do. And you grew up saying the same thing to your kids, living the same way. And when it comes to our decision-making processes, we navigate in our mind and we say, man, how am I going to do this? When it came time for me to get out the military, I was getting medically retired. And I was thinking, man, if I don't get this much money, I'm going to have to do this. So that's what keeps people in the military longer than they want to be. And that's why you got to admire entrepreneurs that get out there and say, hey, I'm banking on me and my efforts instead of me banking on somebody just giving me a check every month. Not saying we don't work for it, but see, when you bank on yourself, you got to put in the work. When you say, and that's a scary feeling when like realtors, real estate agents and stuff, they say, man, I'm banking on, I got to sell these houses. I got to get out here. I gotta. And they putting the onus on themselves rather than me say, okay, I got a regular 9 to 5 and I'm going to work and I got stability. And that the lack of that stability will push certain people into positions to where they feel they have to do certain things.
So if I am hearing this correctly, fear can impact the decision-making process because you fear taking an L and not knowing how to recuperate from taking said L. Is that what I am hearing? I am trying to understand because I might be pissed off all the time, but I can still learn.
Yeah. Or sometimes the L may be too great that you don't want to take the L.
Or sometimes some people know, hey, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, but you know you lazy. You know you ain't getting up out the bed till 10:30. So it's all on you. And if I know I'm a lazy person, I don't like to get out of bed till 10 o'clock, but I got work to do. I know I need a 9 to 5 because I need some people need that push, need that encouragement, and need those things. And they say that stability is a guarantee versus me sitting up here getting out there doing it on my own because I know I don't even have that dog in me. I talk like I got that dog, but I ain't got it in me.
Yeah. And in my situation, Chris, that L may not have been worth it. There are some dudes who, if they get divorced, they may not ever be able to see their kids again. So it may be worth it for them to stay. So yes, they may take a loss, but that L might not be worth it. You know what I mean? If you get divorced and your son is 4 years old, you know what I mean, and you picked wrong one, and she's that one. It's like, if you ever leave me, you know what I mean, you ain't gonna never see your child again, right? So let's be honest, those things happen. So it's like, do I stay with this woman and try to work it out till he's 10, 11, 12 or so? Maybe I can kind of get divorced then. You know what I mean? So sometimes taking that L may not be worth it at the end. Sometimes maybe staying a little bit longer to make sure that you have that relationship with your son or your child may be more important, or at least maybe that's what you were thinking at the time. Especially for some of these military folks like myself or other guys who travel around the country and around the world. You know what I'm saying? So, like, the only way some of us was able to be around our kids was some of us had to stay married, a lot longer than what we may have wanted to. Because if you're traveling around the world, you're in different parts of the state. One's in Arizona, one's in California, in Virginia, all these different places. Like, you want to raise your children with a certain level of stability, then may have to not take that L.
See, I think when we may raise them with a certain level of stability, but we think the kids don't see the things that go on with the parents, and we stay in situations and you're arguing, you're cussing, you're fighting, you don't like her, she don't like you, y'all in separate rooms. Kids see that, and so now you developing their minds on marriage at an early age, and they saying, I don't want that BS, because if this is what marriage is, I don't need it. And so that's why you have situations. Now, not saying you're wrong, but it's not a all-encompassing situation, because sometimes you got to say, man, I got to suck it up and pay this lawyer. I got to suck it up and live in an apartment. I got to suck it up, because if I stay, I'm miserable. If I'm miserable, I'm no good to the family. I'm no good to the children, because if the children are unhealthy mentally, they grow up with that, and it develops them into the mentally deranged adults.
And not to go too far off to the side, I want to make sure that we're keeping fear at the forefront of the discussion. But is it possible that, based upon the talking point that you guys are talking right now, could we be creating fear in the child about what relationship looks like when they see these things unfolding before their eyes?
Yes.
Yes, but I think
I'm speaking as a product of it.
But I also think that there's always there is assumption that the parents can't be cordial in front of each other for the kids as well too.
Right.
You know what I mean? A lot of times we think that the parents are just arguing and fussing and fighting. Sometimes it just don't work out. You just don't want to be together. Like in my situation, there wasn't a whole bunch of fussing and fighting and cussing and stuff like that in front of the kids. You know what I mean?
Too.
Yeah,
but see,
that too. And that's sometimes, as a parent, that may be one of those hard decisions that you may have to make. Because at the end of the day, you don't know, and sometimes you may think it may be worth the risk, but I don't want to spin off too much, like Coach said.
But it sounds as though. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm gonna say this because y'all jumped into this conversation 2 feet in, and y'all gonna run with it. But I'm gonna say this: fear is leading both sides of these arguments, right? Sometimes you just got to make the decision you're gonna make, because if my decision is to stay so I can raise my child, then fear cannot cause me to change that mindset because of how they're gonna view the marriage. Because on the flip side, if it's better for me to leave, fear is also gonna make me think of the concept of, well, who's going to raise my son and teach him how to be a man if I'm not there? So unfortunately, there's just some decisions that there's a L you got to take on both sides, whatever decision you make, but you got to make your decision, and fear cannot keep you on one side of the spectrum or the other. And that's why I think this conversation has really gone. The fear of my child having a bad concept of marriage, or fear of someone else raising my son, or me not being in my son's life at all. We just have to go ahead.
No, I was listening. I was listening. But if I am hearing this correctly, Unc, it sounds like you had a contingency plan to stay in your child's life by staying with the woman that you created children with long enough to actually have a relationship with the child. It was not necessarily about you and her fussing and fighting in front of the children. It was more along the lines of, I need to stick into this long enough for my child to actually understand what is going on and show that neither one of us are bad people. We are just bad for each other. Am I missing a step?
No, you that's yeah.
Unc, did you want to respond to that question?
Yeah. Yeah, so this is kind of go what Chris was saying as well. So I think that in some cases it can be interpreted as selfish. I think that's a judgment call on the parent. If you are a father and you have 3 kids, and you may not be able to have a relationship with them, and they may end up being raised by another man, and you don't know who that man or men may be. I think that as a father who wants to be there, I don't think that that's something that I think that's what most people want. Most people want, 2-parent households. So I don't think that was selfish. I think, like I said, it could be interpreted as selfish, but I think overall it's pretty much a judgment call on the parent. And I think, when you're young, sometimes we don't necessarily know if we're making the right decision or not. There's not really a book that's written out there for our specific situation. So all of us, no matter how much guidance and information that we get, we're just hoping that we're making the right decisions based off of our experiences and based off the information that we have acquired to this point. So to answer your question, I think, yes, it could be interpreted as selfish on the surface, but I think as you dig deeper and you peel back some of the layers, I think that you can find a reason to justify why a man would want to stay married to a woman for a little bit longer to build a relationship with his sons.
And I think that this is a real conversation, right? Because here's a statistic that is thrown around in on YouTube concerning this conversation of marriage and divorce, is that 87% of divorces are filed by women, right? And they use that to say that men are more tolerant in the relationship than women are, right? That could be a truth, but here's the reality. There's less fear on the woman's side because men have to think of the thing like child support and not seeing their children, right? Men don't have that exclusive rights to children off the back. You got to fight for it, and you have to destroy the woman's name in order to do that. And even that brings a fear into the man because you don't want your child or children seeing you bash their mother for the sake of being able to be a parent. And so this is a real fear for men. Like, and I know it sounds like the conversation turned, but according to the numbers, 80%, 87% of divorced men are probably dealing with this fear. Because why is it that the men are staying in toxic relationship, but women, when they're tired, they can just go? Because some of those fears you named, and I'm not saying no women have fears in divorce. I know divorce is ugly, period. Let me put that out there, right? It's ugly. But those extra added demons that play a role in the mind when it comes to divorce, men have to take a much longer time to think things through before they make that decision. And so I think that that's more of the reason why you look at those numbers and you say, "Oh, well, women just leave just because they're tired." No, the man might have been contemplating leaving for a long time, and a lot of men would tell you before a man walks out, he separates himself from the relationship mentally.
Yeah.
And sometimes, yeah, my bad. Go ahead.
No, you good. Yeah. So I got the numbers, and I am just going to play the other side of the fence, because I don't disagree with anything that is said, but there's a counter argument to that as well. Those numbers can be represented by the people who only took the whatever survey that was given. There are some people who probably did not even respond to that. So I am an advocate of statistics, but I also believe that statistics can be skewed to for me to create the understanding that I want to create. Now, I do know that there is a lot of men that I know that fall into that category. So I just want to kind of put that out there, because this is not the conversation, or this is not the topic to where we are bashing anybody on one side or the other. It is just our intent to create an idea of awareness. So I know we kind of spun off in that direction based upon Uncle Junior giving his heartfelt example, and we definitely appreciate that example. But the example was focused on the fear that he was experiencing within the scope of his relationship. That is all. I want to make sure I'm saying that completely clear. Moving forward, as I look at this question, I go to answer this question: how does fear impact decision making? I believe that fear will have you to think on the lower form of the decision that you need to make, as opposed to thinking the best version of the decision that you need to make. So, what does that mean? That means I'll go out there and apply for a job, and they say, "Hey, we're going to offer you $25 an hour," and I'd be like, "Yeah, great, I'll take that because that's safe." But at the end of the day, I will not challenge that and say, "Okay, that sounds great, but how about $45 an hour?" So that's the thing. Fear will have you to move in a direction of safety, kind of like what Uncle Junior was just describing. Safety is what you're wired to do. I can't remember who said that earlier, but they were exactly right. Your brain is wired for safety. I want to stress that piece so everybody can understand. Your brain will choose the safest route for you. That safe route will keep you in bondage. I can't say that enough, because wherever you're existing within the scope of that safety, you're not experiencing the other side of that. You're not experiencing the possibilities. You're not experiencing the what ifs. You're not experiencing what we call more than enough, because you're not willing to take a chance on yourself. So I want to make sure I'm stressing that, because I believe it is key. So great response. I appreciate everybody from what, and Uncle Junior, thank you for that, brother. Because again, I understand what that's like. I have the same shared experience, so I understand what that's like. And again, our experiences are our experiences. They're not right, wrong, or indifferent. They're just ours. And everybody has a collective experience. And if we can learn to come together and share those experiences minus any form of judgment, then what you'll find is that we will get to the point to where community can involve. So again, thank you for that. Next question, because we're starting to come close to time here. What does the societal portrayal of fear influence, or how does the societal portrayal of fear influence the collective understanding and experience of it? Sound like it was spot on time.
The societal portrayal of fear will have people doing things that they do not need to do to face an outcome that 8 times out of 10 will never happen. People were going out, and when the beer bug hit, that's what we have to call it on the internet. When the beer bug hit, toilet paper and essentials were cleared out of every grocery store in your city. And we were shut down for what? A month, 2? You understand what I'm saying? That right there in itself led a bunch of people to spend a bunch of money they did not need to spend to avoid an outcome that didn't happen. Yes, people got sick. My old martial arts teacher died. When I was working for a company here, the team leader's grandmother passed from symptoms of it. So yes, bad things did happen, but it did not happen on the scale that they pushed it out. You understand what I'm saying? So fear pushes people to do things to, like I said, Fear pushes people to do things to prevent something that there's a good probability that will not happen.
I agree 100% with that. If you look at social media, if you look at certain things out there and what is portrayed, if we look at, mass shootings, different things like that, like Chris said, there's a certain amount of fear there, and I understand it and I get it. But the reality of it and exactly the amount of the cases that it really happens is very, very small. And that's not to take away or, anything that has ever happened to anybody in any mass shooting or anything like that. Much respect. And my heart goes out to all of those people. And I'm not trying to dilute their situation, their experience, or anything like that. But there's a big mass, big thing that this thing happens like on a daily basis, and it happens often. But if you look at the size of the world and the United States, you realize it's this small. Like I said, it's not to take away from anything, but society causes a lot of fear. And how it's been depicted in different cultural narratives and all those different things that go into it. So it's a big thing, and how people are very influenced in how they make decisions and how they move on a daily basis because of it.
Not to mention, fear has us afraid of our reflections. Fear will have a woman out here thinking that she cannot go to the gym without a man looking at her as a creep. Fear will have a man out here thinking that he cannot approach a woman because the difference between flirting and sexual harassment is her attraction level to him. Fear has us fearing each other. It is silly. It is silly. But that societal portrayal of men versus women influences how we behave toward each other. And it is trash, because I say this all the time. We need each other more than mainstream media will let you to believe. And there aren't a lot of dudes out here that are acting like this. It is just put out there so much to make it seem like that is the portrayal. Fear will have you thinking that you cannot trust this man because this man will cheat on you, especially if he is earning a certain amount of money. Fear will have a man thinking that I cannot trust her because she is attractive and I know that other men are going to be hitting on her and she is going to go for that validation. Fear has us fear. It has the societal portrayal of us, and our reflection has us afraid of each other, and we should not be. What you are seeing on mainstream media is not the norm. They are portraying it as such so that way we can stay separated. How can I be the only one that sees this? For y'all to be so educated, and I'm speaking on a general statement, for y'all to be so educated, you all make some of the dumbest decisions based off of what you see on TV, on the internet. And I'm gonna shut up.
I think to what you just, the point you just made, Chris, is for some of us there's a benefit in that fear, and for some of us there's a comfort level in that fear, so we feed into it. If if I already have a fear of speaking to women because I don't feel like I got game or whatever the case may be, then I play into that societal fear of speaking to women because it keeps me in my shell. And so I wait for whatever signs or whatever openings I feel that she's sending me, telling me she's attracted before I go in, because I'm comfortable dealing in this environment. Or I'll just flirt with the women that I have to talk to at work or whatever the case may be. You get what I'm saying? So I think sometimes societal fears allows us to play into our fears even more, the ones that we already have internally set. But uh, the portrayal of uh, societal portrayal of fear or of the influence of it collectively, it shapes everything we do if we could never think outside of whoever's pushing the societal information, i.e., Chris Talk News or social media platforms or whoever that may be. A lot of us live our lives through the news or through social media, and we fear formulating our own opinion for the fear of being looked at as or outcast or looked at as some type of having some type of phobia, which means fear. I'm sorry, I just had to slide that in there. But that's what we do. We live through, we listen to people on podcasts, and nothing wrong with podcasts. Keep listening to the Heart of Men podcast. We love it. But we listen to people on podcasts and we take it for gospel, and we never search within ourselves of how we feel about a situation.
One more thing and then I'll shut up. Coach, to me, you just exhibited a small piece of fear as far as the societal portrayal, because Unc shared a story. Tawame agreed with it. You said that you had gone through it, but you had to preface it in a manner that didn't seem like it was an attack on a specific group. That is another big fear. We as men fear that we cannot share our experiences because we are going to get put in a box that we do not belong in. Men cannot be honest, at least not brutally, point blank, lowest common denominator honest.
Okay. Oh, dang, Chris.
I'm not following those last two talking points.
I gotta follow up with because Chris came with 64 bars right there. When I started college, I wanted a marketing degree, and when I went into marketing, I seen how in society how things were geared to keep certain people in place. I just say it like that. And whenever you watch television, whenever you look at your periodicals, whenever you look in your news outlets, you'll see what if you're watching Fox News, that's right wing. If you're watching CNN, used to be left, liberalist, whatever. So whatever you're watching will feed your fear to however they see it. And that's why we watch it. We watch it for that purpose. So if you see somebody in the hoodie and it's a black person, you automatically think, man, they mean danger to me.
Let me cross the street.
And even when I watch TV shows, anytime somebody wants to be inconspicuous or whatever, they throw on a hoodie. It can be 700 degrees outside. They throw a hoodie on with a baseball cap and some glasses, and everybody out there in bathing suits. Like, you don't think you look different? But that's how they depict it. And we see that and we think, man, so now the average person, they going to see it, man, if this person got on a hoodie, they mean danger. If this person is walking like this or talking like that, they mean danger. That's why when it comes to us and police stops, it goes a certain way because they don't have the training to say, man, these people aren't, not just the training, but to me, they need to be in the neighborhood. They need to get used to the people and know the people. I don't think other people should police us. Let me get off that soapbox. I think we need to police ourselves. We need to be the ones doing all that. Because when people come from the outside, they don't have a care and concern for you. You just a savage. I'll just say it like that. And society portrays us certain ways, whether you're black, white, Mexican, or whatever, and we laugh it off a lot. But as a collective, we got to say, this is a norm, a societal norm. It's not a danger. It's not something that we should be afraid of. It's just how people act where they are. Instead of running to, I'm going to call the police, all these Karens and Kens and stuff like that. Because society teaches you to be afraid of, like Chris said, your own reflection. And we feed into it also.
I agree. Well, can I say something real quick? Part of what we can't do is feed the same flame or the same tool of fear for our benefit if we're going to rebel against it, right? Because you use the term Karen. Did you use the term Karen? I thought I heard the term Karen, but if not, I'm gonna use the term Karen. We have taken the opportunity to use this World Wide Web and social media broadcasting to point out Karens. And we have Karened almost everybody in the world that disagrees with somebody. If their voice is louder, they're the Karen. And what we have done is we have fed the flames of the social media influence to the point to now, how do we rebel against those negative impacts and those fears or those negative viewpoints of who we are or who a certain group is? We can't fight it because you can't also give power to it. At some point, your circle has to be your circle, and who you keep around you is who you keep around you, and everybody else is just entertainment. Like, I don't know, I can sit on social media and watch reels, but it's entertainment. But what I can't do is take those reels and make it real life, because half of these jokers speaking has never lived my life. And I don't want to speak on somebody else's life, but I get on some of those podcasts and ask how many of them jokers slept on the park bench. So how can you tell me I don't know what it feels like to be this or to have this or to not have that? And that's what they do. You got black people out here forgetting they were poor and people was on crack everywhere in the 90s because there's people on podcasts saying black people ain't never had it bad. And I'm not pointing out black people over anybody else. That's the only experience I have. So just being honest, like, but there's people, these young people believe in this social media so much, they thinking we making up our traumas from our generation. But you're not. So my whole point is, like, you can't fan the flames of the fire that is causing a lot of this fear and then jump back and say, this is the cause. It is the cause, but what are we going to do about it? How do we attack that output that leads to fear?
So what I would say is, into this entirety of the conversation, I think from my perspective, first and foremost, everybody's correct. Not that you needed my approval, right? But I think the other side of it is that fear has been weaponized. And so when you really stop and really stop and think about it, there are other people behind the scenes who are thinking about certain things and say, this is the response that we want to have. So if this is the response that we want to have, in order to get said response, we need to inject this amount of information, this type of information, and then put that information on a loop. And then when that information hits the loop, whether it's on the news, whether it's in social media or whatever, then we will gather enough viewers so that now they're starting to think about the what ifs. And the what ifs that they're thinking about is the ones that we give them. Chris gave a perfect example, but if you go back and look at those numbers, again, statistical data, those numbers created the mindset that they wanted you to get. It didn't talk about the people that overcame it. That's the thing that we have to understand. So the numbers create the mindset. Statistical data, in most cases, create the mindset that the creator of the data wants you to understand. And so when you look at, again, those different examples that you guys gave, there was a particular outcome that they were looking for. And that outcome was derived based upon based upon the biological aspects of fear. If I inject this information knowing that this is what they look at, then the result would be this thing. So again, all great points, and I greatly appreciate that. And I think we have something else that we're going to put to the table before we get into our final thoughts. So again, shout out to Cassandra McKenzie and Bernadette Simmons for becoming a part of the membership program. Again, they are trailblazers. They will be the ones who will be participating in the program. They also get to listen to us create the actual training that actually goes into the program, and they get to inject their thoughts, they get to inject their questions, and so they actually participate. So don't miss the bus, jump on board with them as well and become a part of the membership program. And I do something special for them pretty much almost every day. So they get a lot of messages that come out and kind of get them into the frame of thought based upon talking points and things of that nature. So as always, this is bittersweet for us because this signals the beginning of the end. And so, with that being said, we're going to have the youngest dude go last today because he is on fire. I'm sorry, not the youngest dude, the second to the youngest dude. So, that dude over there gets to go first. So, we go.
I was like, that ain't what we agreed. So, I'm going to say, keep it simple, right? Learn how to use your fears properly, right? Because I understand that there are some level of fears into almost everything we do, right? But ask yourself this question: what did your fear teach you? You know, there's a lesson that is learned. I am afraid to move forward because this, and this. So I've learned that these are the possible outcomes that can negatively affect me in this. And then my next question is, how can I now maneuver in a way to avoid these negative outcomes or maneuver within those negative outcomes so that I can still accomplish my goal? And remember this, almost every entrepreneur that I know that either has been in business for a while or is just as successful at what they do, they all made it clear you have to fail more than once to learn your lesson. And before they've all made it to where they want to be, they had to fall. So even after your fear came true and you fail, there's a lesson learned. Pick up, dust off, keep going. One.
I wrote down a couple of things for my final thoughts. The first thing I wrote down is that fear is awareness. Some people are scared of heights. What? That's fine. It's okay to be scared of heights. You choose what you do with it. Fear can make you not want to be broke, right? So I'm taking a different approach with some of these different final thoughts. I think that, people that may have grown up poor or something like that, they may move differently with their finances because of the fear of what could happen and the fear of being back to where they're sleeping on park benches or eating ramen noodles and beans or with rice every single day or whatever. Um, so I also think that it's okay to not want to overcome some of your fears. If you are afraid of heights, I don't think that you should have to listen to social media or some guru and tell you that you need to get over that fear of heights. If you don't want to jump out of an airplane, then you shouldn't have to get over your fear of heights. I think that it's normal, and I think that sometimes it's okay to have certain fears, and it's okay to not want to get over them. And lastly, I think that fear can be motivation. Um, I don't want to be a bad father. So maybe like my father, I'm not speaking on myself, but someone who may have their thoughts, they may have been brought up in a certain neighborhood or certain lifestyle inside of their home where their parent or their dad or their mother may have mistreated them, and they grow up and they have a fear that this is not the type of parent that they want to be, so they move differently. So that's my final thoughts for this evening.
Ooh, I think when it comes to fear, I have pretty much two fears. Little people, can't call them whatever, and cockroaches. And it's like, but sometimes you have to face fears, especially if they are self-debilitating. Like when I was in the military, hanging out of a helicopter and rappelling, I don't like heights, but it's something that I had to do. Face your fears head on. If you are afraid of something that will prevent you from moving forward, you got to face it. Even take it at a little steps at a time to where it gets normalized to you, to where it's like, oh, it ain't that bad. I'm not going to die if I do this. I'm not going, because everything can't go to death, just like the chart we had or the diagram we had. everything won't kill you. Everything won't end bad. Some things might end well. And you prevent yourself from a lot of great experiences when you live in on that level of fear. So make sure you experience enough fears. Hey, go into it saying, okay, I don't want to do it. I may have a little fear in me, but I'm going to do it. And never push your fears or your lack of whatever off on your children, because then they grow up not experiencing things simply because you didn't want to experience it.
I am going to keep mine short, sweet, and to the point. Whether you are an entrepreneur, whether you are going to seek a job, whether you want to stop smoking, whether you want to lose weight, whether you want to do anything that will benefit you, understand this: your worst fears never happen. That is my final thought.
Listen, I am going to reserve my final thoughts due to time because I want to make sure I'm respecting everybody's time. We appreciate you guys for joining us, and I hope that you found value in this discussion. We are going to be working on a 7-step personal enhancement plan, which includes how to overcome fear and step into extreme confidence. So I think that is going to be an awesome plan. I think you guys will find value in it. And so with that being said, go ahead and jump into the membership plan so that you can have access, membership program so that you can have access to that. Listen, shout out to these gentlemen, man. They were amazing tonight. I greatly appreciate all the value that they added. Shout out to everybody in the chat. You guys, as always, were amazing. Again, like Rolling Like the Car, you guys, the smartest chat in YouTube. We love you guys. We appreciate you guys. And we definitely appreciate the value that you add. I couldn't get to every comment, but trust me when I tell you that I see you. So with that being said, have a wonderful rest of your evening, and my bad. Have a wonderful rest of your evening and an awesome weekend. And we'll see you guys next week at the exact same time, exact same location on the Hearts of Men podcast.